Let's work on our history. So to do that, let's go to our user interface, widget blueprint. We'll call this w_history. And this is just going to be a scroll box full of history entries. So let's make another widget. We'll call this w_history entry. And in our history entry, we are going to replace our canvas panel with a horizontal box because we just want two text side by side. And let's go to our text. This first one is going to be our what's it called? Speaker's name. So if we change this to say like Monica, you'll notice that the entry for our history also moves to the left a little, and we want all of our entries to be horizontally aligned. So to fix the size of our text for our speaker name, let's wrap it with a size box, and this size box will override our width to say 200. Let's get rid of these text blocks because we want to use the rich text block, because why not? They're cool. This first one will be our speaker name. And we want to make sure our text style set is set to our DT text styles, otherwise our text won't show up. Same thing with our other one, we'll call this one entry. Make sure it is DT text styles. Also, we want it to auto wrap our text, and we want the size to be fill. You'll notice right now it's very thin. If we hit fill, it will fill up the entire H box. So, compile, save this. Let's go to our graph, get rid of these functions, and we'll add a custom event. Sorry, don't get rid of all those functions. We want our, what is it? On construct. Event construct, there it is. And we want two variables. This is going to be our speaker name. We'll make this a type text. And we want another one for our entry text. We'll make sure these are both instance editable and expose on spawn. And all we're going to do is we're going to get our speaker name, and we're going to set the text to be our speaker name. Here we go, and same thing for our entry. Get entry, set text to be our entry text. That should take care of our history entry for now. So let's go to our history, and we're going to replace our canvas panel with a scroll box. A scroll box is just like an H box or a V box, except it can scroll. If we go to our scroll box in our orientation, we can change whether it is horizontal or vertical up here. We're going to make it vertical though, because we want it to go up and down. Some of these don't really matter for our purposes. Yeah, most of them don't really matter for our purposes. I do want to note though that you can change what the bar looks like over here in our bar style, underneath style. So our scroll box is going to contain our history entries. Let's do that. Let's go to our graph, get rid of these functions, and we're going to make a custom event. Custom event. We'll call this add entry. This is going to be called from our dialog widget when we update our text. So in our add entry, let's get our, sorry, our scroll box is not a variable. We need to make sure it is. So let's click on it, make sure the is variable is checked up here. Then we go back to our graph, get our scroll box, and we're going to add a child to it. Add child. That child is going to be a history entry, so let's make that. Create widget. Class is our history entry. We'll pass this into our add child. And for the speaker name and entry text, we can just click on the pins over here and drag this into our function to add a pin to it. There we go, like that. Compile, save this. And back in our dialog, let's add our history over here just for now. We're actually going to change this a lot later when we create our menu. But let's just add this to our canvas panel and move it off to the side somewhere over here, let's say, like that. Sure, why not? Compile, save this. Back in our graph, we are going to add another pin to our update text because we want this to be called every time we update our text. So our branch now goes to our den 3. Our set speaker name and visibility is den 2, and our hide buttons is den 1. And for our den 0, we are going to get our history entry, sorry, we're not adding a history entry. We want to add a history to our canvas panel. Like that. Alright, so our history is going to add entry in our den 0. And for the speaker name, we're going to get our dialog context and get active speaker, active participant. We need to cast to DLG dialog participant, otherwise it won't have the display name function. And we're going to get display name, and we're going to make it to target text so that it has the what's it called, textile wrapper stuff, textile tags properly surrounding it, otherwise the speaker name won't show up. So we're going to do the same thing for the entry text. Get our dialog context, get active node text to target text, and pass that into our entry text. The add quotes will be if our active participant is valid, so is valid. And normally that would do it, except when we get our participant display name, this is a function that's going to be called on our active participant, and if we don't have an active participant, it's going to try to call this function on a null pointer, which is going to give us an error. So instead, when we do our cast in our den 0, there it is, if it failed, we're also going to add an entry to our history, add entry. Except this is going to ignore the speaker name part. We're only going to add the entry text. So let's compile and save. And if we hit play, you'll notice that the history shows up here. Hespheria says, hello, I'm Hespheria, what is your name? Go trash, nice to meet you, give a gift. And you'll notice that when we exceeded the size of our history, the scroll bar showed up. And we can scroll through it. We can also right click and drag to scroll if we want. And yeah, you also notice though that when we add our history, it doesn't scroll all the way to the bottom, which we want it to do, because normally when you check your history, you want to see what the most recent lines were. So we want it to scroll to the bottom when we add an entry, so let's go do that in our history. After we add child, we're going to get our scroll box and say scroll to end. Now this isn't actually going to be very perfect or great, but it'll work most of the time. Compile, save, and play. Trash. And when we add entries, it now scrolls to the bottom so that the topmost part of our history is entry is visible. Normally this won't be a problem because you'll notice that the I appreciate it isn't showing up. It's not scrolling all the way to the bottom, but it won't be a problem most of the time because if we go to our dialog, our history is most of the time going to take up like this amount of space. So if we compile and play, sorry, if we compile, oh, this is like that, why not? Compile and play. Trash, it's not going to show up right now because the top of it is at the very top, but if we add some more entries, there it is. It's normally going to have enough space to display our lines of text. Anyways, let's make this smaller again and move it off to the side. We're also going to want to have a max history number because, well, we don't want to have all these widgets taking up memory. Also, most visual novels do actually have a max history amount. So let's go back to our history and add a variable. We'll call this max history length. Sure, let's go with that. We're going to make this a integer. And when we add an entry, instead of just directly creating a new widget, we're going to ask this if our scroll box children count, get children count, there it is. We're going to ask if the children count is less than our max history length. If it is, we're just going to create another widget as usual. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to update the text of our first widget and move it to the bottom of our scroll box. So let's make our max history length something like 5 for now, because I don't want to have to click through 200 times to get this to actually work. And if it's false, we are going to get our scroll box and we're going to get child at 0. This is going to give us our very first child. We need to cast to our w underscore history entry. Let's convert this to pure cast, because I know for a fact that we're only ever going to add history entries to our scroll box. And as a history entry, we are going to get its speaker name. Sorry, not the text variable, but the get speaker name, the widget variable. And we're going to set its text to be the speaker name up here. And the same thing for its entry. Get entry, set text to be our entry text. After that, we're going to get our scroll box and we're going to add child. That child being the history entry. And this will automatically remove it from the beginning of it and put it back at the end of our scroll box. And once again, we want to scroll to end. Scroll to end. Let's compile, save, and play this. What is your name? Trash. Right now we have 3 entries. Now we have 4 and 5. And when I give another gift, it got rid of the hello I'm Sphere up here, but it moved it to the bottom. You'll notice that the text didn't change though. Sometimes this happens for whatever reason. To fix this, we can go back to our history entry, and we're just going to make this a function instead. So we're going to say, what are we going to say? Custom event, that's what it is. Add custom event. This is going to be update entry. And in the update entry, we're just gonna do all this stuff. But we need to set our speaker's name, so let's add a new input in here. This is gonna be text. We'll call this speaker name. Another one for entry text. And we'll set our speaker name to be speaker name. Set our entry text to be our entry text. And then we'll do all this stuff. Sure. Compile, save, back in our history instead of manually setting our text over here. We're going to tell our history entry to update entry, passing in the speaker name and entry text. Alright, compile, save, and play, and it should update the text properly this time. Trash, give a gift. It now scrolls down. Hello Hemisphere should go away when we give a gift, and it did. And the bottommost one now says thanks, I appreciate it, like it should. Alright, I'm going to set the max history length to something reasonable. Let's go with 200. And that should do it for this video. We're actually going to, like I said, completely move this history widget out of our dialog later when we create our menu, but that's for another video.